you know.
Okay. Yeah.
Uh, and
I
you
think just
also think,
sharing our experiences,
Mhm.
uh, that's valuable
yeah.
Okay,
because those are lived experiences, right?
exactly. Yeah.
And uh, sometimes people find, as Anjana said, that idea of not being alone.
Hmm.
And I don't think any of us is pretending to be an expert on
Mm,
any of this,
Mm,
but we've all been going through it
mm.
in some capacity or the other. And
We
we've
are
learned some things and
experts
we are
of,
looking to share that,
you know.
and part of this thing is that's one of the reasons why we are doing this whole series that we're talking about. And I know that all of you have worked on creating like an outline for that, for what this coverage is going to look like. So I think that's important.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, so the only thing that I added there, Anjana, in that document is
Okay.
to talk about the caregivers themselves and their own fatigue, mental state, and
Yes, the last question, right? The mental and physical care. Yes.
yes, yes.
Yeah, I have another script that I have a couple other questions, but yes,
Okay. That was something that also came up
absolutely
when I
important.
was attending those workshops by the ACOM workshops by the state.
Mental state.
Yes, the last question, right? The mental and physical care.
Okay, there's an echo, Prachi.
Yeah. Okay, let's see if it's still
Okay, it's gone.
okay.
Hopefully, that was me. I
Absolutely.
was logging on to the YouTube just
Okay.
to see.
Uh,
Right now, it's just us, right?
yeah. Yeah, because how can we caregive if we are not taking care of ourselves? The caregiving itself will suffer if the caregiver is not supported.
Yes.
Don't they
Yeah.
say that, like caregiver, heal thyself?
Yeah, it's what they say in the planes, right? Put your oxygen mask first.
Yes. Mhm.
That's
Oh,
a good
you have wonderful one-line.
analogy for it.
Yeah, otherwise you cannot help anyone.
Yes.
Although every caregiver struggles and pushes on.
No, I think it is very important because it has been my experience and I'm happy to talk about it. I would not, if it had not been for the network of my friends in India, this would have been really hard. And because they are all going through it,
Hmm.
they were my emotional support system. And I truly appreciate it. I never miss calling them. I mean, they don't expect me to call them when I go to India, but I still do because I remember during my hard times that they were. I mean,
Yeah,
everything that, even the care that I was able to arrange was because of my friends.
yeah.
So,
Okay, Prachi is reminding us it's time.
okay.
Prachi, it's time. You want me to get started?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. This conversation is part of a new series we're starting at India Currents, where we open up our newsroom not just about the stories we report, but the lives we're living alongside them. Today's conversation is called Before We Report Caregiving in Our Own Homes. And that's what it's all about, really. Before we tell stories about aging and caregiving in our community, many of us are already experiencing it in very real and very personal ways. And so today is just an honest conversation about our experiences with caregiving, what's challenging, and what we're still trying to figure out. As always, let us know what resonates or doesn't, and feel free to share your thoughts, experiences, and suggestions in the comments section as we go. Let me call upon you guys to introduce yourselves. Meera, do you want to start?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Meera Kymal, and I'm the managing editor at India Currents.
Hi, I'm
And
Snigdha.
go ahead.
I'm a contributing editor with India Currents.
Hi, I'm Nandita Bose, and I'm a contributing editor with India Currents.
Vandana?
Hi, everyone. I'm Vandana Kumar, and I'm the publisher of India Currents and get to work with these awesome women. And the reason we are here is all of us have been taking part in caregiving of a senior loved one in our lives. That's the reason every single person here on this team that you see is a part of that. I'm the eldest of 3 siblings, and my mother lives in India, and I'm involved in taking care of her, just as the other people on our team right here.
That's wonderful. Before we begin, let me go over some housekeeping. Please introduce yourself in the comments. We love seeing where you're joining us from. We want you to participate in this conversation, so please put your questions and comments in the chat. Please keep comments respectful and on topic. We want this to be a positive space for everyone. And don't forget to hit that heart button if you're enjoying the conversation. Prachi, are you going to put a prompt for the audience yourself? Do you want me to read it out?
I will do that.
Okay, perfect. So let's get started. Caregiving for a parent can gently shift the relationship as the child steps into the role of a caregiver, and often offers the same support that they themselves received from their parent. But it does not happen overnight. When did caregiving become real for you for the first time?
I can start. My mother came to live with me, with my family, when she was 68 years old after retiring. And she was part of our family for over 30 years. And the caregiving did not happen overnight. It was a transition as old age took its toll. And I would say the last 2 decades of her life, I was a primary caregiver, but I did have the support of my family. So it for me, it was a very natural transition. It did not come as a shock to the system, but it was something that we all, me, my family, my children, my husband, we all grew into being caregivers without realizing we were, delivering care.
That's something we've heard over and over again. People never recognize that they're caregivers in our community. Vandana, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I think, Meera, you said that so well. That's exactly how I would have described it. First of all, when I first came to this country, my in-laws had also moved here. They traveled between India and the US, but for 18 years, my father-in-law lived with us. I never thought of that as caregiving. He lived, his family, he's living with us. And yeah, we took turns in making sure who got to, take care of his appointments, take care of his home stuff. But today we have language, we have language to describe this role that a lot of women play. And it's mostly women, we also have to recognize that too, that of caregiver. More recently, my parents who live in Jamshedpur, India, my father passed away about 10 years ago, and my mother decided to stay on in in India. My siblings and I, we all live in the US, and we invited her. It's like, hey, come and live here in the US. And she has visited here dozens of times. America was not an unknown quantity for her. But she said she just didn't want to, she wanted to live in her house and not be a dependent on someone else. So it's been remote. And when she falls ill, we realized that, hey, we have to step up. While we have a lot of physical care, as I'm sure the others are going to share as well, there is a lot of physical help, but family plays a different role. Maybe Snigdha? What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. To your point, even in my case, it became a reality closer during COVID when my mother, I could realize, my father's also, they were also very independent people, did not ever want to impose on us. And, when we started asking more and more questions, I realized that the physical abilities were, drastically reduced. And when I realized that my father was having to do almost all of the care from my mother, that's when I realized that things were slipping, and I had to more actively participate in managing the care. And it was during COVID that I went to India. And also, I think it's important to recognize that I continue to manage the care with the help of my sister who's in India. And you can't take the eye off the ball. You have to always check in, make sure. And if the care is not good enough, somebody else comes in. But it's like a chain reaction. Like when I'm taking care of my family, my parents, and then, my husband has to take care of my family, my children. And the same goes now, like my father-in-law lives here in the US. So now my husband is the primary caretaker for him, and then I am the support system. So this is a multi-generational family event. This is not just, me and my mom or me and my dad. We are all involved in this.
Yeah, I'll chime in. So caregiving for me became a real situation rather suddenly in 2021 when my father had a stroke. And till that time, it was for us, it was a very distant thing. I'm an only child, and I knew that eventually I would shoulder the responsibility, and that was something we all knew. However, the circumstances, both my parents at that time were pretty healthy and they were very active. And then suddenly this happened, and within 4 months, there were other complications, and within 4 months, my father passed away. And in the interim between 2021 and 22, my mother was still the primary caregiver for him because they were settled in Mumbai. And I was just traveling back and forth to support him, to support my mother through hospitalizations and things like that. But she was still very hands-on with everything and shouldering the entire responsibility. But soon after my father passed away, um, after a few months, I brought my mother to visit me here in the US. She had not consented to move to the US to be with me, but that was the ultimate goal for my husband and myself. So it was more a testing ground that we were going through. But in the meanwhile, we sort of prepared our home to make it friendly, senior friendly, with all the ergonomic changes that were needed in terms of bathrooms and having grab bars installed. So the works. But towards the end of it, after a few months of being with us, and she was slowly trying to come out of her grief and settling here, and I believe was even considering moving with us, but she was diagnosed with an autoimmune condition which sort of made which was progressing faster in the winter because of the cold weather. And then we realized that she would not have been able to stay with us and withstand the American winters, and she needed to go back to warmer climes and the tropical weather that she's used to. And that was something that the doctor suggested to us. So again, our plans got appended in that sense. And she was happier to be back in her own home because that's where uh, she had a lifetime of memories, and it was very hard for her to leave that. But that's when my caregiving responsibilities by remote became really, became real to me in that sense. And then traveling at least 3 times a year to be with her, several hospitalizations. But I'm immensely grateful for the extended family and relatives that we have, without whose support it would have been impossible for me to care for her from here. That's what I would say. The support system is incredibly important, and we really need to be grateful for that and nurture that.
Yeah, they say in this country that it takes a village to raise a child, but I think it takes the village your whole life through.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Uh, can you think of a situation or incident that happened when something in your caregiving journey, something you were not prepared for? Somebody want to take that question?
I can take that. It was the sort of aha moment when this happened. We were living in a different country at this time in the UK, and my mother had a left ventricle failure in the night, so her heart gave way. And I remember she came to my room, she said, "I can't breathe." It was the middle of the night, and I was like, totally, I didn't know what to do. I just took her in her nightdress, put her in the car, and I drove through the town. I ran several red lights, and the cops pulled me over. And they were like, "Why are you running red lights?" I said, "My mom's ill." Then they escorted me to the emergency room. And then, of course, there was a series of events where we ended up in hospital. I was behind the ambulance, and it was new. I mean, this whole experience took me by surprise because I didn't have a support network. My kids were quite young. My husband had to stay back and look after them. And then the whole episode that followed thereafter, dealing with doctors, dealing with, in intensive care unit, it was all new. It was a rude, I wouldn't say it was a rude awakening, but it was like, oh my gosh, I need to learn this fast. And I think the one outcome from that particular event was it taught me to be an advocate for my parent, which I think in a lot of situations things can run away with themselves. All the experts jump in. But I made a very concerted effort thereafter with, future hospitalizations or future doctor's visits to make sure I knew the issue. I educated myself. I have doctors in the family, like most of us do, asking them questions, you know, leaning on my friends who were amazing to educate me. So I became a health proxy for my mom officially. So I could speak for her. Not that she didn't know English, but she couldn't articulate her needs in the way that would bring the best outcomes. So for me, that unexpected event was a learning experience, a very sharp learning curve to become more educated about being a caregiver. And I'm sure others have similar experiences. This was mine.
Yeah, that's wonderful advice. Anybody else want to jump in?
Wow. Not quite the same as Meera has described hers, but my experience is a little more recent. I talk to my mom every day. This is one of the things, she's in India and I have a set time. So if you guys ever call me between 8 and 9, my phone's going to be busy because I'm talking to her. That's my time. And it's the time is deliberate. She's usually done with her dinner, and I get to talk to her about her whole day. And because I talk to her every day, so I can also hear in her voice or in her tone when something doesn't feel right. So I started noticing it's like, why are you saying that? Why are you saying that? Something that felt, hey, my mom would not say stuff like that. To a point that I'm feeling like, are you becoming paranoid? Like, what is happening? So I knew something is wrong. I just didn't know what it was. So I would ask her, it's like, hey, what did you eat today? Did you have your medicine? She said, yeah, I had my medicine. Now she's surrounded by a lot of caregivers who can help her physically. They are unfortunately not educated enough to do the kind of medical advocacy that Meera was describing. But so I kept asking, are you taking all your medications? And then at one day she says, oh, I've stopped taking this one medicine of mine. I said, okay, I know that what it is reacting with you in some way. So then I contact the other guy who's a caregiver over there. I said, can you have her blood panel done? I spoke with some medical doctors here, figured out, it's like, hey, she's talking like this. They said there may be a sodium imbalance. There might be that. So I sent that instructions to the caregiver saying that, can you get this test done? And he was able to get those tests done. I said, send me back the reports. And they sent me back the reports. And thankfully, I was planning to go to India anyways. So I said, you need to restart that medication. And when I come back, then I went with her to the doctor and explained why she couldn't just stop taking medication, even if it felt inconvenient, even if it felt it's like, oh, it's making me go to the bathroom too many times, and movement is difficult, and so why do that? So that was sort of an intervention I had to do, because I realized like she had become quite ill. I was actually very fearful when I went, thinking, I don't know what I'm going to find. But thanks be to God, is she did recover with once she was back on her medication.
Yeah, I hear this from a lot of people, right? Suddenly you have to become so aware of medical terminology, understand what your parents are going through. That's difficult if you don't have the training.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's
Yeah,
jump to
I
another.
can.
Yeah, please do. Please.
Sorry, yeah, I can speak to that as well. One of the experiences which I was sort of unprepared for was so my mother has always, all her life been very sharp. She's a mathematical person. She's very analytical. Her memory is incredibly sharp. So once when she was visiting me, the last time that she was visiting me and stayed for an extended period of time, she fell ill and her sodium levels dropped to very dangerous levels, and that triggered neurological problems, and it triggered, you know, hallucinations and things, and that was something I had never witnessed and never experienced, and was the fact that something like that can be so incredibly dangerous to the brain was something I realized with that episode when we rushed her to the hospital, and then she was immediately put in the ICU, and that's when we realized that uh, these are life-threatening episodes. So uh, so to see my mother, who's been always very lucid, have these neurological changes was very it was scary, and it was something that I was unprepared for. And then of course a lot of learning and research and reading went into understanding what was going on. But yes, that was something that unnerved me. That
Yeah. As y'all stepped into your caregiving roles, and it increased over time, how did that change your day-to-day lives? Whether here or you were managing your parents remotely.
So I can take that, Anjana. When my mother fell sick, I did have my dad as her primary care, her immediate care, and he, by God's grace, was in good health. But I mean, I realized that I had to step in, because he would probably do the daily stuff for her initially, as long as he could physically manage, until he couldn't. But everything else was on me. So I still remember, because my older son was probably close to 10. He was 9 or 10 years old. He was still in elementary school. My younger one was 3, and it was COVID. And I told my husband that I needed to go, and he said, "You go." And that left me. I had to talk to my older son. I told him, you have to now become a little man, because you have to help your father get through this. And I told him, like, and that's what my son did. So our lives changed in the way that I walked away to care for my mom at a time when my son just had to figure out how to do his daily work. And he would wake up, he would pack his own lunch, and he would just tell his father to drop him off, so that my husband could take care of the younger one. So they grew up, and they realized that the mother would have to go from time to time for extended periods of time to take care of her father. And so for me, it was, I had to make complete shifts in how I think. This life here with my children and my husband is a different life. And then when I go to India, I am the parent to my parents. So my daily life becomes about organizing. So it's like running two families at the same time. So, and you have to just get used to the swinging, the pendulum swinging in your head and your emotions, that you have to give your emotional and physical self to your children and your family, and at the same time to parents who also need you. So my daily life, I realized that I need flexibility. I'm very grateful that my jobs are flexible, and the people, this amazing team here understands, and we all kind of support each other when this is happening. And I kind of realized that this is going to be my life for some time. And I think that I don't plan big for myself, because I know that these caregiving responsibilities are there, and frankly I'm happy to do it. There's one thing I want to say. I know it sounds very it sounds sometimes very like more of drudgery and like sad and rap. No, but you're taking care of your parents when they need you. So I would also like to keep that in mind, that there is an amount of satisfaction and joy also in knowing that you can be the support that they need when they need, as best as you can.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you're a big source of comfort also for them.
Yeah, I mean, I think I do see, like, they want to be independent, but they also can see that they feel confident when you're around.
Yeah.
So true, Snigdha. Unlike you, my children are all grown and gone away. So now when I go to India for extended periods of time, Nandita was describing going 3 times a year. I also go twice a year, and I'm able to spend an extended period of time, spend with her, take care of a lot of stuff. Even when I come away, my it doesn't really disrupt my day. I do take care of all the payments for her, the banking and all that. So that's something I can do at my own time. Isn't a I try to set up efficiencies around all of that. So doesn't change when I'm here. When I'm there, then I'm physically there to do whatever is required. And I try to do something joyful if possible. Try to take her out if possible. She's going to protest. She's like, oh, it's so hard. I can't go. Why don't you go? You go do this. I can go out, but I try to do something that she would not do if she's left on her own. And I suppose we all try to do that, find ways in which we can bring joy or comfort to our loved ones.
Absolutely. Yeah. Anybody else have anything to say?
My experience has been very similar to Snigdha's, because both of us are caring for our parents remotely, and both of us have children in school, in high school. So one of the ways in which it has changed my day-to-day life is just the little additional um, focus that I have to put in on her health matters. My mom is pretty independent as far as, sorting out her finances are concerned, her banking, all. She's very comfortable with the phone and mobile apps. So all of that is the day-to-day stuff is taken care of. But I have to keep an eye on her reports, her medical reports, make sure that the tests are getting done on time and the doctors are consulted. So all of that, and the flexibility. So I work flexible hours again with this wonderful team here, and everyone is so understanding when we have to go. And importantly, we have to be prepared to quickly leave and be there when there's an emergency. So being emergency ready is something that has changed. So that is one of the things we need to be able to do.
Hey, I'd like to add one more thing, which I think Meera and I will probably have that in common, is when we have grandparents living with us and raising children at the same time. For many of us who grew up in India, growing up in multi-generation homes is very common, right? You had grandparents and parents and sometimes even uncles and aunts living together. But here, I think my children say that, who are adults themselves, that growing up with a grandparent in the house they learn different things. They learn the art of caring for someone else, because they do care for their grandparents, and they are willing to make accommodations, and they're willing to, share. My children, I think, have been incredibly fortunate to have had their grandfather in their lives for 18 years of their lives. And they felt so close. He was someone that they could turn to for anything and say, even come to complain about me. It's like, mom said, Dada, my mom said this, complaining about this. He was their ally, you know? So they say now that they learned how to talk with old people. They're very comfortable. And my son was telling this to me even recently. He says, people that have not grown up, they don't know what to say when they meet older people. But he says, well, they're just people, you know, something to remember. Mira, you must have had the same thing because
Yeah,
your children also
I
had the same
just listening to all of
experience.
you, hats off to those of you who are doing this remote care. I cannot imagine the difficulty, of being away from your parent at a critical time. So I think I'm an only child like you, Nandita. So, but I see myself as being very fortunate that I was right there for every up and down in the caregiving journey. And to Vandana's point, yes, I think having my children grow up with her, they've known her all their lives. We always call my mother our firstborn because she came before the kids. So my daughter, who's 30 now, has had her grandma or Thai, as we say in our language, her entire life. And it's utterly beautiful to watch the relationship that they had. And very quickly, my daughter learned a lot of Indian songs and bhajans from my mother. And then she created a Spotify list so that my mother could listen to this music that she loved. And right, right now, both my kids share that Spotify list because they want to listen to the music that grandma used to listen to. And my son, boys are an interesting entity, but it was just for me amazing to see the relationship he had with his grandmother. Like during the pandemic, he would give her haircuts and because we couldn't go anywhere. So I think children growing up with a grandparent in the household is very special. And they saw the good and the bad. I mean, and my kids helped me through the good and the bad. And I think it's taught them to not fear old age, you know. And of course, my mother has passed now, and they've dealt with that immediacy of death in the family. My daughter made all the funeral arrangements, and it was just for me a nice way of closing out that circle because they were involved from beginning to end. And I think in the US, old people tend to get hidden away. They're not walking the streets. They're not visible. And you're right, Vandana, just having an older person in the house just opens up a new way of thinking, a new sense of empathy. And I hope all our children have an opportunity to develop that with grandparents. But
Yeah.
again, hats off to all of you doing this from a distance. It can't be easy.
I
Yeah.
want to jump in with a comment from the comment section. Basically, there's a question. Reliable companionship is a challenge and a real blessing. Old age brings loneliness, and having this sense of community is so important. It is also a challenge in the USA. What are your thoughts?
I agree. It is indeed a challenge. And I think part of the reason, on a more serious note, the reason we are having this conversation, the reason we are trying to um, understand um, how we can be at India Currents can be helpful. What are models that are out there that we can perhaps bring in and share with the community at large? Because really, no one should feel alone in this process. Snigdha was talking about how important that sense of community is, like her community in India. And whether in India or here, I've realized that it's really important to have that village, that sense. And there are, through this appeals that we sent out, so many people have reached out with so many different organizations and their different efforts, I think we have a phenomenal opportunity to bring all of that together and share it with the community. So we ourselves didn't know about them, but people are now telling us about efforts in San Diego, efforts in San Jose, efforts in the Bay, in Fremont, the Santa Clara. What's going on? What are different people doing? How do you create that sense of community? How do you create that village when you don't have that your companion anymore? I think it's a very important question because in any partnership, one partner goes first.
Yeah.
Where is that village going to be? Because that loneliness can be tremendous. And as many of you know, I've experienced that myself when you have a loss of a partner. But, and as you age, I think that challenge becomes even more. Who is your village? Who are the people that are going to be there for you? And many of my friends, now we are all in about the same age group. So this is a conversation, and I'm sure it's happening with all of you, right? How do you develop that? It takes perhaps a lot of planning and a lot of work to develop that village. It won't just magically appear. It takes effort.
It's so
But even when you
easy
find out
to,
about that,
yeah, it's so easy to make friends when you're young, and then when you're raising children in that middle age, you drop that a little bit because you're so consumed with raising children. But it's so important to maintain those friendships because when you age, you need it. What else, um, to hang out and chat and have chai.
I think, Prachi, to your point, and to the person who's commented, loneliness is actually, and a sense of isolation I am seeing is actually not uncommon, even if you're surrounded by people. It just creeps in when you grow older. And I've seen a lot of elderly go through this feeling. I think it comes as part of aging. And whether you're in India or even here it becomes even more acute. And what Meera raised was really true, because I remember when I first came to the US like 20 odd years ago, and I was in New York City for 3 months doing an internship there. I was looking around and saying, where do the older people go? Like, do New Yorkers not age at all? I just couldn't see them anywhere. And then one day, suddenly a bus stopped by in a by lane, and like they came pouring out. And I'm like, where were they? And then I realized, oh, there's some sort of separation here, where maybe they are in an older home or in a retirement home and they came for a visit. And that's when I got to see them. So that was a difference that I noticed right away, that, we see all generations all the time when we grow up in India. And then over here, there's some kind of gentrification or separation going on, and it's where you live when you're young and where you live when you're middle aged with kids, and where you live when you're older. So I think so there are two things to this. Number one is that I feel like that isolation and feeling of loneliness, and it's also good for I guess for us to reach out to the elderly community and say that you're not alone. A lot of people feel that way. And um, and and I say that also with the understanding that when I started looking for care in India for my mother, my friends and my network, they were my saviors. They were my support system, because when I called them, the first thing that happened, they said, we are going through it too. And that makes a huge difference, that immediately you know that you have more support on your boat, and this is not a lonely journey for you. And then we exchange notes, and we exchange resources. So the part about the loneliness, to the listener, yes, absolutely, it's here, it's in India too, and we have to work our way around it. I was working on a story where one of the sources said, especially in the US, we've given too much importance to our being individualistic in our lifestyles and in our pursuits. And you're saying, no, it's not just about aging in place, it's about aging in place together. So it takes as Anjana, you said at the beginning, it takes a village to raise a kid. It definitely takes a village to also age gracefully and spend the rest of our lives. So yes, that's what I want to say.
I
Thank you.
was going to just comment that loneliness happens even when you're living in, my father lives with my brother and kids.
Yeah, exactly.
He's lonely because of his old age. He's lost most of his siblings, most of his cousins, most of his friends. He's 88. There's very few of his peers left. He feels lonely, even though he's surrounded by love, and that is an issue for old age. And we can do support him emotionally and be there and provide joy, but that feeling doesn't go away.
Oh. I saw this comment that Prachi has shared about the Black African American person who's listening. It's difficult because I did not have any support of my siblings or other family members. There was a lot of resentment. That is unfortunate, that you had to do this on your own. Family is
Everything.
family is everything, and families are also funny, right? I feel I'm very fortunate that my siblings all step up for these trips to India, and everyone does the best that they can. One thing that I have learned to give myself and perhaps to you, listener, is that give yourself grace. Everyone's doing whatever they can do. You do the best that you can do. And people are at different stages. There are different things drive different people. We can't control things, we can't control. I know we like to think that we control everything, but we don't. So sometimes, and it is hard. But to have a village, and I think for a number of immigrants like us, we're all first generation immigrants, right? Most of us came here. We did not have any families that came. So we had to create a family. And I think I can speak for each one of us when I say that each one of us created a family beyond our biological families.
Right.
Because that was the necessity. You had to know people that you could lean on. And sometimes they don't necessarily have to be blood.
Yeah.
Family comes in all shapes.
Yeah, a quick pro tip here, Anjana, and to the listener, sibling misunderstandings will arise when caretaking responsibilities come. This happens, this is very common, and you're not alone. And at some time, the egos will come in, and this has happened. And I say this not just from my experience, but a lot of my friends who've been in the same situation have said exactly the same thing. And especially if you're located in different places geographically, it can intensify. It is just to understand, that it's not about you, and it's about a parent, and that you need to set aside your differences and see what's best for them. And sometimes one person will have to take that responsibility to make sure that the conversations are amicable, because you're looking to, and there will always be one sibling who might be carrying a heavier load than the other, but it always helps. Whatever help comes your way is a blessing. So it's, again, you're not alone if you're facing this. And it's just something to work around. I know Nandita and Meera have done this solo by themselves with all the responsibility. And I remember, Nandita, we had this discussion where you mentioned it's a blessing. Also, it can be a blessing because then you don't have to, you are not talking to anyone. You make the decisions, and you make the decisions fast because you're the only one who needs to make those decisions. They're both ways. But to address him, that I'm sorry that you had to go through this, but it does happen. And sometimes you just have to speak to sometimes you have to just be the bigger person and speak to your sibling and say, hey, how can you help? Because our parent needs us. It's not about us anymore.
Yeah. On the other hand, I can talk about guilt. My brother does the lion's share of the caregiving back in India of my parents. And I only waltz in, as he says, occasionally. But, that's just the circumstances, and I carry a tremendous amount of guilt about that. But you do the best you can, like you said. And I try to be supportive emotionally of my brother when he's frustrated, when he's upset, when he's sad, because what else can I do from afar? But these are really real questions and real situations we all deal with. And like you said, every family is wonderful and quirky and different personalities, and we have to learn to just deal with all of it. I'm going to share another question here from another listener here from Ravi Ramachandran. Do you think your children who are born and grew up here will take care of you the same way you took care of your parents? The million-dollar question, isn't it?
I'll answer that because this has come up in our family. And it's interesting. My children think that I will go and live with them, or my husband and I will go and live with them. But my husband and I don't want to. So I think part of the reason is we grew up in a different world where the caring for a parent was a very natural progression. I do feel, and this is just our circumstances, that I think the demands of young people today are much more than we had to cope with for whatever reason. I think it also depends on the partners they have in their life who can accommodate this. And I was very fortunate with my choice of partner. Was very just took my mother in as his own, and much to the sort of shock of his co-workers who was like, you're living with your mother-in-law. And it's not going to be the same for the next generation for whatever reason. And the reason I say that, and this isn't just from my personal experience, I think it's very important that people like me in my age group make plans right now for what's to come instead of passing that burden on to our children, because we don't know the world they're inheriting and they have a lot to deal with. We don't know what partners they'll end up with. So I feel that burden of care should not be put on them, and that we should take responsibility for it and recognize that it's coming and decide what steps we're going to take to make sure we're as independent for as long as we can be.
I'd like to add to this, Anjana, because I think my kids are the oldest among the lot here. They're both married, with spouses of their own and everything. But this question has come up, like at one point where my son has told me that, just like he said, Dada used to live with us. So I'm just assuming you're going to live with us, just like Meera said, her children assumed children, you're going to live with us. The question is, I'm not sure I want to. I've lived independently, and I'm not sure at this point, at some point, do I want to become a burden on my children? And while, of course, right now he's young and, he says he wants me to do that, but I don't know, when it comes to that kind of caregiving, do I want him to do that? So I definitely want to explore my own options. I do know that I'd want to be close to my children, because in the event that they have to take medical decisions, then I don't inconvenience. Someone is nearby and they'd be able to help me out. But I feel incredibly blessed because my children had that experience growing up. They take that in their stride. It's like, of course. My other son also said, Mom, why don't you come? And he was younger. And I said, he said, live with me. I said, no, you don't want to have two women in one kitchen. Thought about it for a while. He said, let's make two kitchens. So we'll have two kitchens. But
Practical solution. And then he gets twice the amount of food.
Love it. Love it. That's perfect.
Let's jump to the next question from the chat. If you could name one thing that would have helped you care for a parent from a distance, what would that be?
Cheaper tickets. No,
Especially now.
Yes. This is, sorry, I just wanted to mention one thing. It's not that if you were close, the situation would have automatically been better. It is it is going to be hard no matter what, even when you're close. It's just one thing less if you're closer geographically. It's one thing less is the travel. but the situation is still challenging. Um, and one of the things, actually, I know he said if it would have been easier, but I thought it was easier because care is more reasonable in India. You know, when my mother had a very debilitating condition and she needed a lot of care, and I'm not sure I could have provided that here, you know, because it's a lot more expensive in the US. She had a doctors who came home. She had pretty much all her tests done at home, including X-rays. It all got done at home. So I think, and I was able to afford two care. She needed two caregivers because she could not physically move. It was a very debilitating condition. And I am not even sure I could have, I do not know how I would have managed that if it was in the US, which brings me to the other point is about resources, which is what we were talking about. Is that, to the gentleman who asked, do you think your children will care? The two things. Number one is that can they? What are the resources that are available in the United States that could help us make this a tad bit easier? It's expensive. Finding full-time care is not cheap. And even my parents always wanted to live independently. They didn't want, like my dad still doesn't want to move in with my sister, which makes it, which is why we need to give him that care wherever he is. They also want to live independently in their houses. So that was one thing on which I think I agree with Vandana, is that, it's also what they see. Like, it's important for your children to see that you're not, they're not the center of the world all the time. There are other people who are going to need their parents' attention, and we just care for each other. You cannot always say, okay, all your time belongs to me. So I think once they see that, then hopefully they will carry that value. Yeah, but it is, resources are an important, and that's something we would like to address as India Currents also. And I'm sure the California government also has been trying to address that. How do you make these resources available so that the parents can age in place?
The gray tsunami is coming, like they keep saying,
Yeah.
and we're not prepared for it. That leads me to a question I had in my mind. Some of you, especially Vandana, who have cared for people here and over in India, as you are for your mother, and Snigdha, what do you think are some things that happen better there and some things that happen better here? Is there learnings? Um,
I think I can piggyback off what Snigdha was just talking about, the resources. Help is available in India in ways that is very hard to find here in the US. And that has been the biggest blessing, that we've been able to continue to find the adequate help. That is definitely done better. Even medical care, I have to say that if it is just day to day, help. Um, why do I keep saying help? Day to day health coverage, or just somebody wants to talk to a doctor. It's so easy in India. If you want to see a doctor, you can go see a doctor that day. You don't have to schedule an appointment 6 weeks later, you get something. The system here is vastly inferior. The plus for my family is all my family is in the US. My mother is the only one in India. And that's why we wanted her to come here. But, we are also honoring that her wishes of wanting to be that independence. And now she feels that it's hard for her to, can live life and run a household, because it does take time and effort to run a household. My circumstances are different. We are very, very fortunate in the kind of resources we have there and the help that we have there, that we are able to afford a very comfortable lifestyle for her. The only challenge for her is her immediate family. Her children are not there. She does have other family that's there, but her children are not there. And someone had asked this question, how much did you consider caregiving from closer while making the decision to move? Guys, that decision came so late in my life when have been living here, raised a family here. My family has deep roots here. So the decision to move back was not even remotely on the radar for me. And I also came at a time, I got married very young, I came here. So my parents were young. I wasn't even thinking about caregiving at that point. So maybe it's different for others. A lot of it depends on your circumstance, whether you're the primary caregiver, how old your parents are, how deep your roots are in either country. Sometimes people early in their careers have options. We also came at a time when India didn't have lots of options for advancement or the kinds of satisfaction that people were looking for with work and education. Today, I go back every year, as I've told you guys, and I see a lot of vibrancy in the country, and I see so much options of things, and I find that people are choosing to go back, but it's such an individual decision, such an individual decision.
I want to make sure I want to address one question before we end about how difficult it can be to be a caregiver, emotionally, physically, financially, even sometimes. What suggestions do you have for other caregivers considering your journey? Any resources or tips that you can give when times get tough?
Yeah, I can take this, Anjana. In my experience, the first thing you need to know that you're not alone, and that and you need to acknowledge your own feelings, your frustrations, your anxieties, your worries. They're all legitimate.
Mm.
And please reach out. This has been my experience, from my personal experience. Please reach out to friends, family. There's nothing to be shy about. This is part of life, and I don't see there's absolutely nothing to be embarrassed about it. You have there are lots of people going through this. They will have solutions. They might have gone through it and found something that would be great advice for you. So please reach out for help, and ask for resources. I think the one thing that I learned from the experience with my mother is that this is a very deeply human experience. This is no amount of apps and digital aid is going to replace caretaking, physical caretaking. This is a deeply human experience. You need other human beings to share it with and to get their help. I found my network of friends and family, especially my friends, have reached out far and wide for help when I didn't know how to manage caretaking, and ultimately I got most of my help from them. And so do reach out. There are resources, there are state resources, but your friends and family, reach out, reach out, reach out, and do not isolate yourselves and think this is a lonely journey that you have to carry the cross all the way by yourself.
Wonderfully said, Snigdha. Anybody else want to jump in? How to help yourself while you're
I
going on
think
this?
also, I won't repeat what Snigdha said, but I think also realize that you are carrying a burden, and then that means you also need care, and give yourself the grace of having some time off. It's like Anjana, you mentioned about feeling the guilt. I think all of us feel guilt when you hear something that's not going well. So, but give yourself grace. You're doing the best that you can do.
I
And
wanted to just add to that, sorry.
go
I
ahead.
wanted to just add to that, that sharing, particularly when we are remotely caring for our parents, um, sharing and talking to our support system who are on the ground over there. For instance, my cousins who visit her on and off, you know, I talk to them whenever they visit the same day, and check in on them, double check with them that, okay, how did you see her in person versus how I see her talking to her on video or the phone. So they are my support system. They are my eyes and ears on the ground, and I'm incredibly grateful to them. But speaking to them really helps, and it does help for them too, because they are able to share their concerns and their what they are seeing on the ground. And so very often, we also take in the feedback. And of course, for ourselves, that is very therapeutic. I find that very therapeutic, and it takes a lot of burden off. So speaking
I
with
just
loved
want to,
ones.
sorry,
Yeah.
Jump in,
No,
Meera.
go ahead, Meera. I'm done.
no, I just want to come at it at a different angle. Is also to remember that you're giving them the gift of time. So don't focus just on the caregiving. Look for those moments that you can share just as regular folk, like sitting down with your mom or dad and just having a cup of tea, spending time doing things like maybe singing a song together. Those little moments alleviate the burden of care. So don't forget to build that into your caregiving, is to spend little moments like I would have friends come over and they would sing songs together. And it gave me a reprieve, but it also gave my mother a moment of joy. So don't make it all about caregiving, and make it also about moments of joy. I think that's important.
Yeah, and do ask them stories about their childhood. There are
Yes.
incredible stories that we don't know. It is fascinating. I mean, the things that can come if you ask them a few questions about what they did in their college or what they did in their childhood, it is incredibly enriching. So it can be a joyous journey. I mean, we do that for our children. There's no reason we shouldn't be doing it for our parents. So I keep reminding myself, yeah, there we have difficult moments with our kids. So it's okay. We'll have difficult moments with our parents.
Yes.
So yeah.
Okay, last question. Rapid fire question. Short answer. First thing that comes to your mind. One unexpected thing that caregiving has taught you.
Patience.
Of course. And who else wants to jump in?
Yeah, you
Resilience, I think.
expect the unexpected. You will hear things that you didn't know. You will see yourself in a way that, I mean, the things that you're going to be capable of. It's a rite of passage to be a caregiver.
Nandita?
I would say resilience, definitely, along with patience, to calmly handle whatever comes our way, to be able to travel and then stay there, whether it's at home or a hospital, to be cheerful with my mother, to exchange stories. So these are all some of the things that I've learned on the fly, and I've learned to enjoy them,
Hmm.
especially the exchange of stories.
Meera?
Oh, since I don't have a parent anymore, I would say just being fortunate to have a parent in your life,
Hmm.
enjoy it.
Yeah. And for me, I would say that, when I watch them age, I hope I have the same grace when I'm their age. I hope I imbibe some of their good qualities and that, I that's what I hope for myself. Um, Prachi, do we have any other questions in the chat?
I think we are good to end this conversation now.
Okay, that's wonderful. Thank you, everyone, for being such a great part of this conversation, for everyone for asking questions and sharing so openly. I think what's clear is that while these experiences feel very personal, they're also deeply collective. So many of us are navigating similar questions, often without enough support or space to talk about it. And that's exactly why we're starting this work at India Currents. This conversation is part of a larger effort. We're building a series focused on aging in our diaspora, where we'll be looking at what's missing and what's working. If this conversation resonated with you, there's a couple of ways you can stay a part of it. You can join our upcoming Chai and Chat, where we'll bring an expert in and get their perspective. And you can support this work as being a part of our 39th birthday campaign. The links are in the description below. But more than anything, thank you for being here, for listening, and being a part of this journey with us. Good evening, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.